This is lesson 2.14, identify parallel and perpendicular lines. So first let's talk about parallel lines. And two things we need to remember about parallel lines. The first is that they never cross. Okay, and the second is have the same slope, which is the important thing to remember for this lesson. Okay, and just a picture, remember parallel lines will go on forever, but they will never intersect, and that's why they have the same slope. Then we have perpendicular lines. That they intersect at a 90-degree angle. So they have to intersect at a 90-degree angle. And they have opposite reciprocal slopes. And that's important to remember. So what that means is, this means to change the sign, and this means to flip the fraction. And a picture of perpendicular lines would look something like this. And they make a 90-degree angle right there. So when we talk about reciprocal, I just want to talk about, here's an example. If I have 3 halves, okay, opposite reciprocal would mean I would have -2/3. I change the sign and flip the fraction. If I had -3, as an example, remember you'd put it over 1, and then you would flip the fraction and change it to a positive. Okay. I didn't set my page up beforehand, so let me do that quick. Alright, so now let's talk about this. If I give you an equation y equals 2x minus 7. Okay, what is the slope of this line? The slope of this line is 2. Remember, it's that number that's in front of x. Okay, then I want to know parallel slope and perpendicular slope. So parallel slope, remember, is the same, so it's going to be the exact same as the original equation, so that's 2. Any line that's parallel to that line is going to have a slope of 2. Perpendicular, remember, we're going to put that 2/1, and then we're going to change the sign to a negative, and we're going to flip the fraction so that it's -1/2. Let's go ahead and do another one. So if I have y equals -4x plus 2, the slope of that line is -4. Parallel, we want parallel, which is the same, so m equals -4. And then perpendicular, we are going to flip the fraction. So if we put this over 1, we're going to have a 1/4, and because it's negative originally, it'll be positive. So let's go ahead and do another one. Okay, so if I have y equals 3/4 x plus 5, the slope of that line is 3/4. And then parallel is m equals, it's the same, so 3/4. Perpendicular, we are going to change the sign to a negative and then flip the fraction to be -4/3. Okay, so I want to do one more here. If I have 3x minus 5y equals 10. Okay, now I can't determine the slope yet because I have to solve for y first. So I'm going to subtract 3x from both sides. So I get negative 5y equals negative 3x plus 10. Maybe. And then I'm going to divide by negative 5. So when I do that, I get y equals negative 3 over negative 5 becomes a positive 3/5 x. 10 divided by negative 5 gives me negative 2. Now I can determine my slope of my line, which is 3/5. I can determine that my parallel slope is going to be also 3/5. And I can determine that my perpendicular slope is going to be negative, and then flip the fraction so it's 5 over 3. Alright, so now we're going to compare two equations together to see if they are parallel, perpendicular, or neither. So if I have y equals 1/3 x minus 3 and y equals 1/3 x plus 4. The first thing you have to ask yourself is, are they both solved for y? And in this case, they are. So then the next question is, are the slopes the same? So slope up here is 1/3, slope here is the 1/3. So yes, they're the same, so that means they are parallel, because they are the same slope. Okay. Let's go ahead and do another one. If I have y equals 5x and y equals negative 1/5 x plus 7. Okay. So are they both solved for y? And they are. So then looking at the slopes, I have a 5 and I have a negative 1/5. So they're not the same, so they can't be parallel. So are they the opposite signs? Yes, one is positive, one is negative. Then you have to see if they're reciprocals. And in this case, if you were to make this 5 a fraction, it would be 5 over 1. If you'd flip it, it would be 1 over 5. So that means that they would be opposite reciprocals of each other, which means that they are perpendicular. And I'm going to abbreviate that. And that's because they're opposite reciprocals. Okay? So, let's go ahead and look at another example. So if I have y equals negative 2x minus 4, and I have 2x plus y equals 5. Okay, so one is solved for y, and this one is not. So we're going to solve that one for y on this side. So we have 2x plus y equals 5. To solve for y, I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides. And when I do that, I get y equals negative 2x plus 5. And now I'm going to write them back on top of each other. So y equals the first one, negative 2x minus 4. And the second one, y equals negative 2x plus 5. So now they're both solved for y equals. So now we are going to compare slopes, which are right here. Let's go ahead and grab the yellow. And right here. So they are the same. So same slopes means they are parallel. And that's because of the same slope. So that's all we have to do for that one. So let's go ahead and do another one. If I have, let's do this one. If I have 3x minus 8y equals 11, and 3x minus 6y equals 10. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is solve them. So I'm going to put, let's move this one over here. So I have 3x minus 8y equals 11, and I'm going to solve that one. So I'm going to subtract 3x from both sides. I get negative 8y equals negative 3x plus 11. And then, of course, I'm going to divide by negative 8. So I get y equals 3/8 x minus 11 over 8. And that y-intercept doesn't really matter because we're just looking at the slopes. And then here we're going to subtract 3x from both sides. So I get negative 6y equals negative 3x plus 10. And then I'm going to divide by negative 6. So I get y equals negative 3 over negative 6 reduces to be 1/2 x. 10 divided by negative 6 reduces to be negative 5/3. So if we look at these two slopes, I have 1/2 here and 3/8 there. They are not the same, so they're for sure not parallel. And they're not opposites of each other because both are positive, so that means that they are neither parallel nor perpendicular. And that's lesson 2.14, identifying parallel and perpendicular lines.